Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Kirby, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scream with Ryan C. Showers podcast, where the film critic meets the Scream fan twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Before I go any further, I need to thank the producers and administrators of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. First, I need to thank TJ Jones, who does all of the graphic design work from the podcast. Also, I need to thank Ashley Summers, Mark Vieira, Sarah Campbell, and Sam Levy for helping me keep the podcast and Patreon community afloat. Thank you to everybody who subscribes to the Patreon at any and every tier. I'm an independent entity, so any bit of support that comes into the Patreon goes back into the podcast. Joining the Patreon gets you ad-free and early access to every episode, as well as the opportunity to join the community of the show. We have group chats across social media. In particular, Instagram is really the hub of the podcast community. More importantly, joining the Patreon is the vessel in which you would use to come onto the podcast, either in a one-on-one situation with me or a small panel. In addition, there's a guaranteed invite every month to a big group Zoom recording about a Scream topic. An exciting feature of the podcast is the audio commentary episodes. Every Scream fan knows what it was like listening to Wes Craven do the audio commentaries for the original trilogy and Scream 4, with Marianne Maddalena and Kevin Williamson and Patrick Lussier. And what I'm trying to do for my Patreon subscribers is I am going to be performing an audio commentary of a Scream or a Scream-related movie, one per month, every month. And my goal is to try to approach these as I'm doing deep analytical analysis about the characters, about the themes, about just general reaction. So it's something that I'm really proud of and I hope continues to be a cherished part of the podcast. So the commentary is available as a normal podcast episode for anybody to listen to like they would any other podcast, but it will also be available as a video watch along. So everybody, please go over to Patreon, subscribe to Scream with RCS. I would be eternally grateful. So I need to go through and thank everybody over at Patreon who is subscribed as a stab investor or a daddy/mama Ghostface. So the daddy/mama Ghostface of the Patreon are Carrie Tenney, Brett Janovich, Corey Wilson, and Stevie Shears. The stab investors include Allie, Amar Karim, Tamika Jones, David D., Gustavo Mora, Jess Mariano, Joey Nobarini, aka The Vault, Josh Calamari, Josh Carr, Scream Queens podcast, both Josh and Justine, The Horror Project podcast, Kevin Abner, Mark Vieira, PWO5, aka Philip Douglas, Quentin Harrison, and Sam Levy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's unusual episode. Today is a funky episode. So, as much as I love Scream, and I love Scream to death, I also love Buffy. And I love to have a Buffy moment on the pod because, in my view, Buffy is part of the web of Scream. It's part of the universe of Scream and the culture that surrounded Scream, not only for the obvious tie of Sarah Michelle Gellar, but just the releases happening around the same time. Buffy that was airing at the same time as the original trilogy, and stylistically, culturally, socially, they are interlinked. And there is a fandom overlap between the people who love Buffy and love Scream. So I love doing episodes where I can talk about Buffy and my love for Buffy. And I have this plan. So basically, from the time I decided to do audio commentaries, I kind of earmarked the November audio commentary to be an audio commentary, not of a film, but of the Buffy musical episode, Once More with Feeling. I think the Buffy musical episode is probably the greatest episode of television in history. And I think that it's just such an opportunity. It makes me hungry for coverage of this on the podcast. I've actually done an episode on the musical episode way back in 2022. I thought that it would be fun to do an audio commentary of the musical episode. So we are going to be doing that today. But in addition to that, we're going to be covering Buffy season 6 overall. So I have 2 recordings here with my friends Sam and Quentin and Kevin, who are all Buffy fans, and Kevin and Quentin in particular are huge season 6 fans, and season 6 is my favorite season of Buffy. And then following the review, which will be all for public consumption, the audio commentary will play for Once More with Feeling. So everybody, you know the drill by this point. So whenever I go into the last segment here, you can either keep listening like a regular podcast episode, or you can pull your DVD out or pull up the streaming service and press play on the musical episode and listen to me narrate the episode as we're watching. So it'll be very fun. So everybody, please enjoy this episode. I would love to do this kind of concept for all 7 seasons of Buffy, because also it's kind of relevant. There will be a new Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show that is going to premiere, who knows when, maybe next year, but maybe the year after. I don't know, but we've seen it film. We've seen all the announcements. We've seen Sarah Michelle Gellar and her support of the show, her appearance on the show. So it will be relevant. Expect episodes like this for the other seasons too. We will get there eventually. But again, I mean, the podcast is a Scream podcast. It will continue to be a Scream podcast, but every so often, like on this Saturday, we will be doing a Buffy episode. So everyone, cheers to season 6, my favorite season of Buffy, favorite season of TV, and Once More with Feeling, which is my favorite episode of Buffy, and I think most people's favorite episode of Buffy, and probably musical episode ever of TV. Maybe the best episode of TV of all time. Who knows? So please enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me. Except it's not Scream with Ryan C. Showers. It is Buffy with Ryan C. Showers. So everybody, please welcome some of my guests here. This is like my Buffy, not only my Buffy crew, but my Buffy season 6 crew. Kevin Abner and Quentin Harrison. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Quentin. How's it going?
I'm hanging in there. It's
Tuesday. Well,
that's a Buffy reference.
Yeah.
Trouble must be Tuesday.
Not only a Buffy reference, but a Buffy season 6
Season
reference. So we've talked Buffy, the three of us, before all together in an episode, I believe, with Amar, kind of like back in the day. But Kevin and I actually did a Buffy, entirely like Scream and Buffy episode, like back like in season 1. So it's fun to like be thinking like, oh wow, you know. So I chose this crew. This has been a long time in the making, and this may not be the only time we ever do a Buffy season 6 episode. Maybe someday we'll do like ranking all of the episodes in each season or something. But I wanted to do this episode as like a series of episodes, like to do, maybe we'll cover all the seasons, just general conversation like this, and then we'll rank the episodes later on. But the Buffy reboot TV series could be coming soon. We don't know when it's going to be airing, but hypothetically, probably within the next year or two. So I hope that we can hit all of the seasons before the new one comes out. So we'll see how it goes. But the reason that I'm sitting here with Kevin and Quentin is, well, first of all, they are two of my long time Scream friends that I've met through the podcast, and they are also Buffy people. So not only do we all love Scream 3 as our favorite Scream sequel, but our favorite season of Buffy all overlaps to be season 6. So let's just start off the conversation here. So Kevin, why is season 6 of Buffy your favorite?
I think mainly it's the whole conversation like around trauma, gaslighting, and all of that. There's just so much, and it is one of the darkest seasons. I mean, you do have Once More with Feeling that's sprinkled in there, but I mean, even within that, there's still so much darkness in that. And so you have everyone trying to move on from Buffy dying in season 5, and then coming to season 6, you have them raising her from the dead. Buffy going through her own trauma, being pulled from heaven. And then you have Willow and Tara, and then Xander and Anya. All of that culminates into like this one gigantic finale that is the only finale that Buffy couldn't save. That it had to be someone else that saved the day in that one. So it's that one. There's just so much packed into that season.
Yeah. So your favorite episode is what is the episode you just described, the season finale, Grave. So I've always been curious about that. Like, I know this sounds really weird. This is very like inside pitching, inside baseball, but like people who pick Grave as their favorite, either like season finale or favorite episode, have like a place in my heart, because I feel like Grave, it's the only finale that wasn't written by Joss Whedon. And so therefore it's, some people put it near the bottom of like their finale ranking. And I find it to be such a cool episode. I love Dark Willow. I love the arc that Buffy goes on within just that episode, from like her talking with Giles through, climbing out of the grave with Dawn. So it's such a great episode for so many reasons. But I think it's just a very cool thing to have Grave as like your favorite episode. So, all right, well, Quentin, how about you? What do you think of Buffy season 6? Why is it your favorite?
Well, I came on with Buffy as a TV show during season 4, and
Mhm.
I also got to come on board with Angel season 1 because it was just starting off then. And I've always felt that in the 7 season arc for the show, to me, the strongest seasons in terms of just the rich character development and them sort of creating, I think, the post season 3 sort of aesthetic occur across 4, 5, and 6, and it culminates with 6. So I always feel like season 7 is like this really interesting kind of coda in the way it sort of, after they sort of build up the team in 4 and 5, to kind of deconstruct them in 6 and then reconstruct them again in 7. So 6 has this really cool sort of climactic peak or peaking energy. I think everyone was really on top of their game in terms of what they were bringing to the table acting wise. I think it's some of Sarah Michelle Gellar's best work on the show. Um, and then, of course, I watched it, like I said, and I was watching it in real time, and I just loved it. I never thought that the show, for me, that it was really any more or less darker at the time, but only in sort of hindsight, as we were sort of a few years removed from it, did that conversation really sort of creep up. And then, obviously, with some of Sarah's comments later, it kind of got sort of relegated to this sort of space. That was unfortunate, though. And since that time, I think there's been this whole new reassessment of the show, and I think that that was a necessary period it had to go through, um, to bring the characters all forward in a way. And there's some really great stuff in there, and I think it's a great season and a great show. And it's, again, it's my favorite of that 3 season arc, 4, 5, and 6, because I love all 3 of those seasons. I like to take them kind of together.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean, no, I like it because I feel, listen, I love the whole show of Buffy. I think that like each season it fits perfectly in terms of like even like, you kind of like we're talking about season 7 as like a coda. And honestly, I get it. I get what you're saying because it does feel like season 6 there is like it reaches like an apex of like everyone firing on all their best cylinders. And then after that, it's like, where do you go? I think that season 7 is climactic. And I think I like Buffy's arc of becoming a leader. And I like this Buffy relationship becoming more adult and like progressing in a healthy way. To me, that's all very real. So I like season 7 a lot, even if I do agree with you. Season 6, I feel like it just doesn't get better than this. And I just don't understand people who kind of disregard this season or who think that this season is lesser than, because like in the same way that season 1 does high school and season 2 does, like your first love, and season 4 does college, and season 5 does siblings or family, season 6 does life, and it's so brutal. And I don't know. I just want to throw this out there. You know, I'm I'm a gay man, and watching season 6, I feel like I understand Buffy's depression. I feel like I understand Willow's desperation, Xander's lack of maturity, Tanya's frustration. All the characters and the worst parts of them that they're experiencing in season 6. I feel like I get. I feel like I got it at a young age on a visceral level that I probably didn't understand. But like all of the emotions that are in there, I feel like I connect to more so because of my life experience and just kind of how rough I had it growing up, just as a gay kid in a small town. So I want to throw it over to you guys, and don't feel pressure to agree with me. But Kevin, what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I completely agree. Season 6 was actually my first one to watch live. So I started with the finale of 5. So, I mean, that was my introduction. But season 6, I think that is one of the reasons why I love it so much, because it mirrors the lives of many of us who are the outcasts, the darkness, the depression, the desperation. And I mean, even going into like addiction and everything else, trying to fill that void. So, I mean, there's so much, like I said, with 6 that just, as you said, it's life. And so I think as many of us get older, we start to look at things a little differently. And so that darkness, I mean, season 1, even season 3, with what they had to go through with like graduation. 6 is that one that, I mean, it just pushes life in your face. And unapologetically, and I think that right there is what really caught me, is that it was so raw and just full of emotion.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so artful in the way that it's done, in the way that it uses metaphors to bring out the worst and the best in these characters and bring out the most human, sad parts of ourselves. Like I can't imagine season 6 not existing in this universe. Like had the show ended with season 5, it would have been a bummer. But the people who dislike season 6, it's like, but do you not see that that's a necessary chapter? That it's like, that part of life is experiencing those really dark, painful things. Part of life is going through what Buffy went through, being pulled out of heaven and being in a funk for a year and a half, making really bad choices, and then coming out on the other end, in a better way with a new appreciation for life. I don't know. Quentin, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because in the last 2.5 months, I did a rewatch of 4 through 6, and I feel like I've owned the show, I've seen it, I've been a fan for a long time, but I really noticed how they began seeding certain elements or leitmotifs as early as 4, which makes sense given what we know of how Joss Whedon and company sort of constructed the show, that and Angel. And I think actually you can always, one of the big tells for people who don't like 6 or people who don't like 4. I love 4. I think 4 was a really important season for all of the characters because it really lays the groundwork for how we get them in 5, which 5 is like probably, Buffy at its best in terms of cinematography. It just like, in terms of like that is the season that people typically tend to go to. But 6 takes it a step further because it does take a few risks, but they're not completely out of the wheelhouse. But all of those moments were sort of leading up to that because I feel like there are two inciting incidents that sort of trigger what happens: Joyce's death,
Hmm.
and I think Buffy's death. And I think people don't sort of take into account, but I think Buffy had tried really hard after the events of season 3 to sort of create this sort of normal life for herself. And despite all of her best wishes or sort of intentions to try to sort of reset romantically, professionally, in terms of with her schooling, personally, she gets all these curveballs, her sister, her mother, Riley leaving, all these different things. And then I think her death, I think there was probably almost like a welcome thing for her too. Like when you hear her talk about it and just the way she was at peace, I think obviously the trauma coming back was enough. But I think the trauma coming back knowing that she kind of had found her rest, I think that was really what was so interesting to watch. Subsequently, how everyone else reacts to those inciting incidents is sort of a ripple effect. Because, you mentioned Xander. I think Xander was a character who really kind of found himself in 5 and really became so dependable and really stepped into that role of the big brother, and then to sort of watch him slowly kind of regress when he's faced with his own stuff. And then you're watching Anya, who had become so integrated into the framework of the family, sort of fall apart when her relationship with Xander falls apart. Looking like watching Willow, like I think it was the episode Forever, and how Tara really stands up and tells Dawn, you can't bring your mother back and all this other stuff. And Willow very carelessly sort of leads Dawn to that book. And just there are all these elements leading to just like the sort of that abuse of power, all these different things that I think Willow, in terms of her trying to sort of hide who she really is inside, that self-loathing, that self-hatred. So I think all of these different things um sort of come to bear in 6. And I think if you like watching characters, not so much I always say struggle, which is not to take away from anything you and Kevin are saying, because you and Kevin have been spot on. But I think if you like watching characters kind of have a beginning, middle, and an end, and there's because there are joyful beats in 6. I think people tend to forget that there's a lot of humor in 6. There's a lot of really interesting things in there. But as they're sort of doing that, like I think if you like to watch the arc of a character, season 6 is for you. But I do get where some people might not like it because again, it was about deconstructing what was constructed across the 2 previous seasons. And I think that sets up again for them to reconstruct in season 7, which we get some great payoffs there and different things that allow us to sort of watch the dynamics come through. Like I think like Dawn is one of my favorite characters now because when you see her growth between, rest in, and heaven, Michelle Trachtenberg, we love and miss you. Um, when we watch her growth between 5, 6, and 7, like just as a character, you just love Dawn. And I have to say, one of my favorite episodes is probably a toss up between Life Serial or All the Way. All the way being, I think, it's a
Really?
great, yeah. It's actually my favorite Halloween episode. It's a great Dawn centric episode. I think it really, really gets to the core of who she is, and you see so many elements of Buffy at the beginning of season 1, the precociousness in Dawn at that point because she's reaching at that age that Buffy was when the show started. So yeah, I know that was a whole tangent. I probably went off on a few little many tangents, but yeah.
You
So
know what? You know what Dawn episode I like that I think is underrated is Older and Far Away. I don't know
that's a great
why.
episode in general.
I have always liked this episode. I love Hal Frick. I love the fact that they're all trapped in that house. I love how they all get pushed to their limits. I like that Buffy and Spike have their thing that's going on, and Tara knows about it, and she's kind of playing with it. And like Spike has the black eye, and like the truth about Dawn that comes out. And I think a lot of people, I can speak for myself. I can probably identify with Dawn in that moment of feeling like I wasn't getting the attention from the people around me growing up that I probably needed. So I like that. I like that episode. I think season 6 is an underrated outing for Dawn. So, but Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, Dawn is one that has been severely underrated. I mean, she does. I mean, you go through from. I mean, she has to grow up very quickly. I mean, knowing that she was the key to. I mean, trying to find her place in the world, and then going through all that. I mean, in a way, she had to do all of that growing in a short period of time. I do think I do like that one where they're all trapped. I mean, because that one was a really good one.
So, my favorite episode historically of the show. I mean, it's Once More with Feeling, of course, because how can you not? But and we'll talk about the musical in a second. But like, besides the musical, taking the musical out of it, and let's just take out the Dark Willow episodes and Tabula Rasa, because those are like the big, like sensational episodes that everybody remembers. So let's take those out. What are some of your favorites in terms of season 6? So I'll kick us off. 1, Normal Again, and 2, Dead Things. I want to just we'll go around the circle and see if we have any overlap. So Kevin, what are your top 2 besides the yeah.
I will have to say Normal Again because I sat and rewatched that one probably about a month or so ago. That one just, I mean, you're just she's stuck between these two worlds, and it's
Literally and metaphorically.
yes, yeah, and so she didn't know where she belonged or where she was, and so, I mean, you go through life being this chosen one and being surrounded by death and destruction and loneliness, and you're then it's flipped to where this is all in your head. Let's just make this go away. So it's straddling that line of wanting to be normal again. I do think that one is one of my top ones. And I mean, I don't know. There's quite a few. I won't say quite a few. There's several of the Andrew Warren and Jonathan episodes that I like because after rewatching them, you can clearly see like how I mean they're gaslighting. I mean, gaslighting Buffy. They're just gaslighting everyone, and so I don't know if I could choose pick between any of those.
Well, so, the trio is interesting because, like, they're controversial. I mean, basically everything in season 6 is controversial to an extent. Spuffy is very controversial. Storyline is controversial. There are some people who don't like the Dark Willow arc, which I don't get. I mean, I don't know how you can't not like that. Tara's death is very controversial. Spike himself is just controversial. Everything. I mean, but the trio is especially because not only like there's two sides of it, right? There's like the real life geek misogynist side, but then there's also the them as like the villains being lesser than and not as cool as Glory and the Mayor and Angel and yada yada. So, but it's interesting too how Buffy was kind of right in terms of like the big bad of the real world is actually people like Elon Musk, right? And Mark Zuckerberg. So, Quentin, how about you? What are your top 2 favorite episodes besides the musical Tabula Rasa and the Dark Willow episodes?
Well, I'm gonna leave an honorable mention to Normal Again because that is again just great work. It's a great episode. And there's a really cool self-referential element to what they say about the trio in there, who I think again, given sort of the unending sort of misogyny we've had to endure over the last, I'd say, decade in both politics and popular culture. I think they were kind of spot on with that. I really like Flooded because I think bargaining parts 1 and 2 open up so strong, and Flooded is just not Flooded, Lord, excuse me.
To
Say
life.
Afterlife, Lord. Even though we love Flooded, Afterlife just has a really cool just structure to it. In terms of just again great character beats. One of my favorite Anya moments where they're in the backyard and Buffy's explaining what's happening to her, and Anya's like, a demon you brought back from hell with you. Or maybe you are going crazy from hell. And just it's like, oh no, you're fine. And they always kind of look
From
at
hell.
her,
Yeah.
from hell. We love Emma Caulfield. But Afterlife and God, there's another one in here. There's so many to choose from. I do have to say, I think I'm going to say Flooded because that's got the really great Giles and Willow argument. And that was
Yes.
just a phenomenal. Anthony Stewart Head is such a daddy and is such a force in that show. Like he just, and it was necessary for him to obviously in his personal life, the actual actor had to step away. But I like that they were able to bring him back in and he was still a presence.
Yeah.
And he just was incredible in that episode. And it just again, Flooded was a great blend of the drama and the humor. And I think that is what is the episode where Buffy reveals? It's Afterlife. She reveals where she was. Yeah. So I just again, it is hard to really pick on an episode by episode basis because I think there's something redeeming in every single episode. There's something to pick out that you really can enjoy, whether it's from the macro to the micro level. I haven't had, like I said, I haven't even had a chance to talk about Spuffy, who I just love that. And yeah, with all of the twists and turns that it took.
Well, so I was going to give a shout out to Afterlife because it is so like it's funny. Whenever the last time I watched season 6, I think Bargaining Part 1 and 2, that is an episode. I think it's the best season premiere that we've ever had. It just like it's so epic and so
I would
broad
agree.
and so cool and just so big, you know. But that's what they wanted because they were on a different network and stuff. But Afterlife, I feel like is where it really clicks into gear because we have Buffy back, you know, and that's kind of like the thing that like really we need Buffy to make Buffy the Vampire Slayer work on some level. And we actually start to really see the consequences of like where she was and like it builds to this arc, right? I actually think Afterlife is a very scary episode. It's one of the most horror episodes I think we have in like the later seasons.
Oh yes, yes it is. And there's some great lines in there again. They're really funny. I'm thinking of the thing where Anya's had cut her
Yeah.
face and after Dawn gets possessed, I didn't mean to cut across you. And Anya's like, did I look like that? I hope I didn't look like that. And then Willow's like, I'm sure you looked really glamorous cutting up your face.
So, but like we all kind of shouted out Normal again, and I just want to give it its due because it is so scary and just in terms of how deep that writing goes, how much it does because they use the idea of the fantasy genre as like you know as the unreliable piece of the life versus real life, you know, fantasy versus real life, and it makes it's like the never ending, like, you know, when you can look at yourself in a mirror and then there's a mirror behind you. Normal again is like looking at trying to find the real one, the last one, that it's just like it never ends. And it's one of Sarah's best performances. And it's such a cool way to kind of kickstart Buffy really getting out of her depression and kind of like choosing to live for her the people that she loves. As she's, you know, 5 seconds before putting them in the most danger that she's ever done, right? And that's some of the darkest things that Buffy has ever done to her friends. And the other one that I picked, Dead Things, this is a very controversial episode because of the trio of it all and how they, to use Kevin's word, gaslight Buffy into believing she killed Katrina. And I find this to be such a human episode. I think the reason why Buffy clicks with me as a character in my heart is because of her dedication to her morals and knowing that she did something wrong and she has to do something about it. Despite Spike trying to stop her and Dawn trying to stop her and everything, you know, she knows what she has to do. And it's just I love the ending. I think those two episodes I mentioned are Sarah's best performances. The scene with Tara, I think, is maybe besides with Willow, the best use of Tara ever in the franchise, ever in the series. Like the idea that Buffy goes to Tara for help on this that she can't tell everybody else. It's just brilliant. I love it. So,
If I could just real quick, the
yeah,
Tara is really great in this season. Amber Benson's work in this, and I think it's great that they returned to that thread where Tara and Buffy sort of bonded in the body. She ends up becoming, and that just shows the intimacy and the closeness of the Scooby Gang that she could trust her to take care of her sister and then also come to her with her certain concerns. And Tara's got, and again, you mentioned, what was the another one? Far, once more, older and far away.
yeah.
And that great scene where Tara go and Anya going at it. But I remember when Tara's character is killed and Willow is confirming that to Xander and Buffy, and you can see the grief on Buffy's face, like the shock and just absolute devastation. Like this person who she'd just been so close with. And so it's one of those great, what I call like almost subtleties that was woven into the fabric of the season where we really got to care about the characters and the way they grew them organically over time and just was great work. So sorry, just had to put that out there.
Well, so I have a direct question for you guys. So, Kevin, point blank, killing Tara, yay or nay? because this is a very like contested issue online, and I feel like I'm in the minority about it.
I would have to say yay, because without that, we wouldn't be, I don't think we'd be able to see Willow's road to being Dark Willow going all the way to being Goddess Willow.
Yeah.
Because she's tapping into that inner strength. It's just in season 6, it's going from a dark, traumatic place, whereas with season 7, I mean, it's she learned how to harness the essence of the magic. So I would have to say with that one, I love Tara. I did not want to see her leave, but I think it was one of those that had to be done.
Yeah, like, this is where, like, I mean, I think it was absolutely 110% the right decision. I don't know if I mean, I would still season 6 would probably still be my favorite, but how would you there's no other way to do season 6 other than to take Tara away. Like, she is, of all of the people in season 6, she is the one person who is consistent and constant and she has her stuff together, even despite being in an abusive relationship. And to take the heart away from everybody, you know, and push everybody to that dark place, especially Willow. I don't know how else you could have truly juiced the subject matter of season 6 without killing her. It We're supposed to hurt when characters die, and they don't kill a main cast member every day. And I just think that without that, it was one of the most brilliant things that the show has ever done. I don't know. Quentin, what are your thoughts?
I want to definitely make sure I acknowledge it. There is a trend. I don't think it's intentional within the broader Buffyverse of certain female characters meeting not great ends, whether it's Winifred Burkle, Cordelia
Jenny.
James, Jenny, Tara McClay. But I think in all of those instances, obviously, Cordelia and Charisma, that's a whole other separate thing, probably separate podcast for that, even on one with you, Angel season 4 fans. I think Tara's character's death was not done out of malice, spite, or negligence. I think it was part of an arc that had to occur, as Kevin was saying, as you have said. And I think in general, for where they were going to take the show next in season 7, I think the stakes always have to be higher so we lose someone. It was the same because we lost Joyce in season 5. I even think, like I said, I'm one of the few Riley people. Riley didn't die, and he does come back, and as you were, which I love. But that splitting that Buffy had to be pried away from that to go to where she was going to go. Because I don't think Buffy's character could have gone to the place where she went to in 6 had she not dealt with that sort of trauma of that
Mhm.
breakup.
Well, and can I just jump in here? Like the use of Riley in season 6 is so brilliant in itself because like what Riley represents is like whenever it's a very real thing about life when you're struggling, really struggling emotionally, or you're depressed, or you have a shitty job, you're in a rut, and then you come face to face with an ex, and they are doing so well. They have a great partner, and they are just kicking ass, and how shitty it makes someone feel, in particular because that's what kind of makes Buffy realize she needs to cut off her thing with Spike. You couldn't have had a better use of Riley, in my opinion, to come back and give Buffy that moment and that realization.
No, I agree. And I love that they both were able to reconcile their parts in the relationship because I had recently gotten into a back and forth on one of the Buffy fan sites I follow a few months ago about how they were saying, oh, Xander was wrong to have called Buffy out for the way she kind of put Riley to one side. That doesn't excuse Riley's cheating, as it were. But Buffy did kind of emotionally abandon him, and that had its own consequences. So seeing them kind of come together and acknowledge their respective shortcomings and come out of it amicably and still have love for each other, I think that was a really great thing. And I think Riley doesn't judge her. He sees this woman he loved at her worst, and he still loves her. And like he says, that none of this touches you. And like you said, I think that gives her the jolt back, where she and Spike have this beautiful scene together where she actually calls him by his actual name. And that's how you know she's serious, because she cares enough about him to actually call him by his name. And I think that's and that sets up for, I think, what happens later in 7, where they are able to come back from the trauma of their relationship and what occurs in Seeing Red and make their way through. But to put a final point on Tara's death, I understand why people were upset. It was shocking at the time, but I don't think it was done with the intention of sort of fulfilling the stereotype of punishing the gay or the queer character. And, Willow does meet another prospective girlfriend, Kennedy, as one of the potentials. And I just think that it was just a necessary part of that arc and where we had to go. that we had to lose. We had to lose Tara. But I think you were spot on about her being the heart of the group. I think that's something that people don't language it that way. So I think you kind of had a Ryan C. Showers first there. But I think I would say that that's accurate. I mean, Kevin, would you agree with me on that? Back me up here.
Yeah, yeah, I do. And I think with one of the things that drew me to the season, which is what has drawn me to like Scream with Nightmare on Elm Street and all of them, you got to know and to love Tara, and then bam, they just rip your heart right out. And so it's one
Yeah.
of those that, I mean, again, you're unapologetically thrown into life. So, I mean, it's going to happen in life, be it a physical death or abandonment or something. You're going to have your heart ripped out.
So, and like, if we didn't kill Tara, if we didn't kill Anya, if we didn't kill off Jenny, right? Then we would just be Scream 6. It would be like just letting people be in these situations and not never having real consequences felt for the core group. So I think that it was, I'll never forget watching the last 5 episodes, ever. The first, I was like 8th grade in the summer. My sister was watching it with me and we binged through them. I couldn't stop. I just find it so compelling, so relatable, so human. It kind of isn't it so cool to see one of our own, right? As the big bad fighting against Buffy in the last 2 episodes. And I think that that's very true to life. Is like, I think sometimes we look at people and villains as like two-dimensional. It's either like, you were always a villain, you're either my friend or you're my enemy. And Buffy season 6 makes us come face to face with the fact of like, no, your best friend can also be your greatest villain at one point, and you have to sometimes be there for them to get them to come back. So I think that's beautiful. Okay. I believe all three of us are Spuffy people, and Spuffy occupies the middle part of this season. Again, it's a controversial relationship. The representation of it I find to be very apt about abusive relationships. I think it's an important story. And I think it's important. It's also true to life and metaphorical. When you're struggling and you're in a bad place, you seek for validation from the worst sources. And I think Buffy sleeping with a soulless vampire is a great depiction of where she was at in her life. And I think it's true to life, where if you're in a bad situation in your life, you could be shacking up with someone like Spike, some, dirty kind of gross guy, that is bad, but you go back anyways for the high of it. So, Kevin, what are your thoughts on Spuffy?
Well, I mean, I've always thought that Buffy really never had a healthy relationship,
Yeah.
period. And after rewatching 4, I mean, I think Riley does come the closest to anything like normal, healthy-ish.
Mhm.
And so I've really enjoyed through the seasons the Buffy and Spike interaction. And for me, I think it was the most authentic, be it romantic or just when he became part of the Scooby Gang. And so I'm not an Angel fan. I'm a jealous fan, but not an Angel fan. But I think for me with Spuffy, I think that one through both all the highs and lows has been one of the most authentic relationships that she had.
Yeah. It's very authentic and also just very fitting. I don't feel like, I like Buffy and Angel and I like their seasons together because of what it goes through in the second half of season 2. But for me, because she has the history with Spike, there is an extra element of like chemistry that's there and an extra knowing each other and familiarity that makes their mutual use of each other to, their mutual abuse of each other, I should say, interesting and natural. So Quentin, what about you?
I think it's just a very beautiful, complicated relationship. It has many different spaces that it occupies. And I think you and I have talked about this. And Kevin, I'm sure I've mentioned this to you as well. I don't like that people infantilize Buffy Summers and a lot of the show. I think they tend to want to keep it in this box. And the truth of the matter is that to Kevin's point and to your point, Buffy never really had a healthy relationship. I think the closest she got to that was with Riley Finn. And then how does she treat him? And so subsequently, I think this sort of obtuse workplace romance develops. But what I give Spike credit for is that there was because he's kind of unique in the sort of the vampiredom of the show because he's still so close to his human self despite losing his soul. And we see that I think when she actually says, "You're beneath me," and what is that episode called from season
10,
5.
right. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. That's Crush, right?
No, the other one where he's was trying to train her. He reveals what slayers he killed.
Full Full
Full
for
for
Love.
love.
Yeah.
And she says, "You're beneath me," echoing back Cicely Halfrek, and he sort of chokes back a sob. So much, and of course they revisit that in Lies My Parents Told Me. But so much of, I think, there's a sensitivity to Spike that I think is very nurturing and unjudgmental, and that gives her a space to just sit with her, and they can be still with each other. And there's no judgment. And those are some of my favorite moments where they're just sitting on the back porch or in the alley, or they're just there kind of walking and talking. And then obviously all the other stuff comes up, and then just to go ahead and just take the elephant out the room, everyone goes on and on about the rape scene and Seeing Red, and it is a terrible sequence, but it was plausible mostly because, and I think it was necessary for people to understand, it didn't have a soul. Spike was soulless. And once that chip malfunctioned, where because of her resurrection, it wasn't able to read her,
Yeah.
it opened her back up for that danger. Obviously, they're beating each other up, and it's terrible. They both are violent with one another.
But it's
But it's real, and it's something that because I think he would go there because someone with a soul. I mean, well, we have people who rape people who have souls all the time, and what that says about people who do that's a whole other thing. But I think that was a space. It was uncomfortable to watch, but it was a realistic place that they were going to go, which of course is another inciting incident for him, because then that puts him on his arc for season 7, and then obviously Angel season 5, where he because that's where I feel he completes his redemption arc. Is he starts it in season 7 and then ends it in Angel season 5. So he's one of the, I think, next to Wesley Wyndham Price, is one of the characters who starts in one place and ends up in a completely different place by the end of the particular show. It's just incredible to watch his transformation. James Marsters is just a masterclass as an actor.
Well, he absolutely is, and I think Spike is actually. I hate to say this because I'm Buffy all the way. I will, I think SMG is the best actor on the show. I think she's consistently the best character. But besides Buffy, I think Spike is the best character in this universe in terms of just evolving, being nuanced, being having layers and going through those layers and really going through different forms of the character, different iterations of the character. It's like it's the classic case, quintessential of like what you want from character development over a long period of time. It's insane what they do with Spike from season 4 through season 7 on just Buffy, even taking out his introduction and his ending, right, with Buffy season 2 and Angel season 5. But like with the scene in Seeing Red, the thing about it is the reason why I think, first of all, I think it's important for the moment. I think it's important for him. It sends him to get his soul. That is without, it's not gratuitous in that respect.
I'm so glad you said that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes.
But like the scene a bit long, yes, but it's if it had it been shorter, we wouldn't have felt what Buffy is feeling. We as the audience needed to get it. We needed to see that yes, we just watched this really sexy sexual romance for the past 10 episodes and we may have been caught up in it. But what is this really? What has this relationship really been about? And we saw it in that scene. And Spike saw it in that scene. And Buffy saw it in that scene. And that motivates him to get his soul and move forward as a character and become better. Isn't that what we want from people? I'm sensitive to it, but I do think I see why it was done. I think it was done with purpose. I don't know. Quentin?
I think you said it's not gratuitous. I think there's a dark humanity and a tragedy and a sadness to that, because they had reached a level of comfort in the abuse that they were doing to each other. And I think and the thing about that is, Buffy finally sort of actually confirms her feelings for him. She says it out loud. And, but when she tells him why she can't go to that next place, it's like he doesn't hear her. And that's the thing, the demon, which is almost like sort of a manifestation of the id, it doesn't want to, it just wants, and it consumes, like she says. And I think just for her being in a vulnerable place, she had been injured earlier in the episode. I think it was a very humanizing moment for the Slayer, that even as a Slayer, she's still a woman. And women, even powerful women, can be, I think it was the most vulnerable she's been since the episode with season 3 when Giles suppresses. Helpless.
Yes.
It was that's really and see, it was so interesting about that is that people don't give Giles the same amount of hard time.
And
Now,
they should.
granted,
That makes me so
they
mad and
should.
jealous of Giles.
Now, I get it, because obviously it's different, and that he's not physically like attacking her, but he is subverting her will by using the little hypno crystal thing and then drugging her and putting her at risk. And it just goes to show you that those things can happen. It's by the people that we trust, that we love. And I think that's a real thing. I mean, you mentioned it again, the dynamic, I think, with Willow and Tara, and even with Xander and Anya.
Yeah.
And I think what ends up going on with that and just the sort of the tragedy of that situation and how that sort of develops. It's just interesting to watch a lot of these relationships, I think, that were forged in certain kinds of fires across the two previous seasons kind of collapse under the weight of, I think, coming out of that fire of those situations. Like, so now that everyone's come together after Buffy's death, now what? Where do we move from here? And all the while, poor Dawn's just twisting in the wind. So so it's just like, all the adults are just on the lam.
You know who has the most consistent relationship or the healthiest relationship in season 6? Tara and Dawn. They're like the only
Oh
two that are
yeah, yeah,
truly kind to each
yeah,
other, like, and that are there
yeah.
for each other. But so I want to get so I have two questions that remain. One is, what is your favorite element of Dark Willow? What's your favorite Willow episode of season 6? And then we're gonna hit the musical and Tabula Rasa, because those two are like, the big blockbuster episodes. But I'll go first and kick us off with Willow, because even though I gave Grave its due at the beginning, and I stand by that. It's an amazing episode, but I like it almost more for Buffy's speech than I do Willow sometimes. But my favorite Willow episode is Villains, actually. It's like there's something extra fresh about that episode, extra emotional. And Allison Hannigan's, we get to see so much of her and so much range from her. And it's the episode that feels the most raw about Tara's death. And obviously, because it just had happened. But I think it's Dark Willow at her best, because we literally see her transformation the entire episode. In each scene, she transforms. So that's my favorite Willow. But Kevin, what's your favorite Willow episode? And you can say Grave. It's not cheating.
Well, I think it's what the last two episodes, what culminates with Grave, her interaction with the fight between her and Buffy and her and Giles. I think it's the what leads to Grave is, I think, my favorite Dark Willow moment, because up until then, she'd been going on losing Tara, trying to do all of this, and she's now at the point to where Giles dosed her with like the pure magic. She got to that point to where she was now at the point to where she had to recognize the pain, because she had just blocked out the pain. And so she's now at the point where she was forced to deal with that pain. And so you had all of that, and then just to the point to where she just wanted to make all the pain disappear.
What's your favorite song from the musical, I should say?
Where do we go from here?
Aw.
Yeah, I think, because that kind of, for me, sums up the season. It's like, now what? Where do we kind of won?
Yeah.
So
We
I think
kinda
that
won.
one, yeah, we kind of won. So I think that one's, the other one, what was it? The one where they have the showdown with Sweet.
Something to sing
Oh,
about?
walk through the
Yeah,
fire.
Walk Through the Fire. Yeah, yeah. Between those, yeah, those two, Walk Through the Fire and that one. So those are my two favorite ones.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing your thoughts on this amazing season.
Always a pleasure.
All right. And Quentin, what is your favorite Willow episode, and any thoughts on the musical episode or favorite song?
2 to go, especially after she murders Rack, and basically she attacks the people who represent her former past. Because as we remember in The Restless, when they have her take her costume off, she's how she appears in the very first episode of the series. And that line, it's so devastating when she says, Willow was, a loser picked on up through high school through college. Now she's a junkie with her stupid mousy ways. And it's just so tragic, because ultimately it's about defacing herself and defacing the relationships that she had up to that point. But it's such a compelling performance, but really dark. But yeah, so there's that. And then so just, yeah, 2 to go. It's just amazing. And then as far as the musical, which here's my copy of the soundtrack, which you can see on
Woohoo.
CD, which I've had.
That one too.
I've had this since I was 17. I love it. Favorite songs are both of Buffy's, which is Going Through the Motions, and Something to Sing About are my favorites.
Awesome.
A special shout out to Xander and Anya's I'll Never Tell.
I love Buffy's songs in the musical. Again, I think Buffy is the MVP of the episode. Tara's great too. Her song's beautiful, especially because of the way it shifts with Giles and Tara, getting to do the reprise. So good. But, well, And I'm glad that you mentioned Two to Go. Two to Go is an amazing episode. And sometimes I feel like I shortchange it because you have Villains, which is the beginning, and Grave, which is the end. And Two to Go has so much good in it. Like that speech you referenced of the transition from the junkie house to the
Oh,
magic
she
box.
reads for Buffy for Phil.
She reads herself for filth. Like honestly,
Yeah, yeah.
what you just said about like she was picked on in high school, junior high school, and now she's a junkie. It makes me so sad, to hear her say that about herself. And so bravo. But gentlemen, thank you so much for coming tonight. And I look forward to talking about the other seasons with you. We will revisit season 6. I would like to do an episode where we hit all of the episodes. It would be hard to do, but we'll figure out a way. So, and who knows, maybe when the show starts, we'll do like, weekly recaps or a monthly recap of like the new episodes, or at least talk about it because we should talk about it. Everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers, but really this is Buffy with Ryan C. Showers. And for this segment, it is Buffy with Ryan and Sam. So everyone, please welcome Sam Levy. Hey, Sam.
And thank you so much for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be here.
We are going to be talking about Buffy, which is something that Sam and I both deeply love. So, Sam, you were on the favorite Buffy episode, right? Back in like 2023, right?
Yeah, I was.
What is your
Yes.
favorite episode? I forget what you picked.
I picked Selfless from season 7. There were a few that I was juggling. The other one I was really juggling was Earshot from season 3. Both fabulous, but thankfully, I'm glad I went with my choice because somebody else picked Earshot, I think, anyway. So it all worked out good.
Yeah. Well, good. So, and I love your shots. It all works. So,
Oh, same.
it's like, in my opinion, it's like if I had to pick one single episode to like describe what a Buffy episode is like, a Buffy of the week, I think it's a really good representation of that. It's fun. It's a little bit dramatic, but there's a big arc with it. There's a great showcase for her. It's a good showcase for kind of all of the characters. We get their personalities. It's really fun. So tonight Buffy is going to be focused on season 6 specifically. It's not like, so I'm a diehard season 6 fan. Sam, where do you put season 6 in your Buffy ranking?
Literally right in the middle.
Okay. So tell me why.
So season 6 is a really, really powerful season of television. It really delves into a lot of really intense themes about the transition from childhood to adulthood, and naturally, this being Buffy, in a really fantasy-oriented way, using lots of allegory, using a lot of metaphor. The season opens with Buffy coming back to life after she sacrificed herself to save the world. So it's really about the death of childhood and the emergence of becoming an adult. And it's really, really powerful, and it addresses all that stuff all at the same time, telling a really compelling story in its literal-minded way in terms of, like, what's actually happening to the characters in the fantasy world. So it uses that as a springboard to discuss all these issues. It is a really difficult season for me to watch at times, though, because these characters who we've grown up and loved for, like, 5 seasons, in their struggle to find themselves as adults and as they become adults, they make a lot of mistakes, which is true of everybody, but they also become really abusive to themselves and to each other. And it's really hard for people like me who watched the show from the beginning and fell in love with all these characters and their banter and really felt like I was part of them, suddenly start treating each other so abominably. And so parts of that really disturb me. And I guess it rightfully so. It's supposed to be disturbing. But there are also parts of it where I feel that uh the arcs that were set up for them suddenly to behave this way were not like the seeds were planted, but they were not convincingly acted out for me in a way. And so I end up becoming really frustrated and quite frankly depressed because the season is about depression. And it is about also the fact that unlike all the other seasons where the big bad was some like outside force that they had to like overcome, this time life is the big bad. So what's interesting to me is that is now that I think that in that way, it is really a signal from a transition from childhood to adulthood because the previous seasons were all about like an external force that was the big bad they had to overcome. And that's a very childlike mythic fantasy like adventure story. But whereas the season 6, the final 2 seasons really are about tackling more adult issues and really about learning that the complex nature of adult life is not always, it's like not always someone else's fault. Like, oh, it's like this season could be a metaphor for like, oh, I'm the problem. Like it's my fault. And I need to change and grow up and start behaving in a better way. And I think what's hard for me is at points during the season is that previously this was never like that hadn't been addressed as an issue, so it was felt like a blunt force shock. I will also say that the transition from the WB to the UPN was like really bracing at the time, because in addition to tackling like really complex adult themes in like really subtle ways that sometimes take like multiple rewatches to fully grasp all the nuances, the censorship really came off. The show got way more violent and bloody and racy than it had been even on the WB, and it had already been pushing the envelope when it was on the WB. Now the rails really came off and it got really, really wild. So, yeah.
So with all that being said, you did a really nice job of describing the situation and kind of giving the like a fair assessment of the season in terms of describing like the reasons people could be drawn to it and also the reasons people could be reviled by it. What's your opinion about it? Does that stuff work for you? Do you like that it was darker and racier, as you said? Do you like that it showed you these ugly sides of these characters? Or is it just hard for you to see them this way?
I would say both. I would say as far do I think it worked? I would say yes and no, but more yes than no. I think that season 6 definitely succeeds more often than it does not, but when it doesn't work, it really, really doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, so what's an example of it working for you versus not working for you? Which I can probably guess the not working for you, but what's an example of it working for you, I should say?
okay, well, I think for the most part it starts off really well and ends off really well, but it in the middle is the hardest time for me. So I would say, well, first of all, I think that the opening 3 episodes of the season are easily the best of any season on Buffy, and I think it's really powerful and dark and shocking, and that it really, really is extremely intense, it's extremely dark and disturbing, and really captures that new atmosphere of, like, unlike past seasons where the gang was really tight-knit, now they're still tight-knit, but it's far more sinister, and seeing Willow especially be so frighteningly authoritarian and downright dismissive at times is really, really it's hard to watch. It's set up good at least initially, I think. There are also several points in the season, um, that I think do a really good job of handling certain things. I'm trying to think. Smashed is a good one. Except that that's a good segue though for what I don't like about the season. So I think that Smashed is really like after setting up the first several episodes and basically just sort of trying to get like all of the threads stranded together. So you have like the Buffy's acknowledgement that she wasn't in hell, she was in heaven, and their friends ripped her out. Then you have like the sort of like, oh, now she has to get a job, which is like, okay. I mean, it was kind of amusing, but it's also really it's devastating for her to be in that position. But on top of everything else, I get it. That's part of life. But I also have like little continuity errors in there that I'm really frustrated. Not actually, no, not continuity errors, just like stuff like, why the hell did the council never pay her? They paid Giles. They should have been
Exactly.
paying her the whole time. But I think that also does go to show how misogynistic the whole Watchers Council setup is anyway. So that's consistent, especially once we find out how the Slayer line was created in the first place. But so dealing with her having to be an adult and now even putting aside the metaphor of her sacrificing herself to save the world and then literally being her spirit being resurrected and her body being resurrected and rising from the grave, from going from childhood to adulthood, you now have to work, you have to support yourself, you can't nobody else is taking care of you. And with Buffy's mom having passed away the previous season very sadly, now she has bills to pay, and she has to like keep up on the house. And she's like, at one point, I have no idea how my mom paid for all this. But Smashed is interesting. It's a great turning point because that's where Buffy really gives into her depression. And because she's so miserable that she starts a incredibly abusive, but also bizarrely really hot relationship with Spike, which is just and lasts several episodes, and it's really intense. I mean, that whole scene where they like have sex and the building collapses is just like, oh my god, I can't believe this is being aired on television. And it's a
And the
yes.
metaphor of it though, that's the thing like that I love about season 6 is the way that like they take the characters' darkness and like the themes of like adulthood, right? But then also give it these grand metaphors of like Buffy and Spike are their relationship is depicted by the house literally crumbling on them as they are going at it, beating each other up and fucking. I mean, it is I guess you are right. It's really fucked up.
It's an it's a very abusive relationship on both sides. It's mutually abusive. So yeah, and a lot of it does work. I will say, however, this same episode is also where this season starts to get derailed for me at this point, because what happens is this is also the episode where they use Willow's magic addiction as a metaphor for drug addiction, and I think that making it so literal-minded tosses her character off the rails, and does so for the next several episodes. And I think that the way it's handled, I think I understand what they were going for with it, which is that like the idea that like her addiction to magic was supposed to be like a way of, well, it's taken me several watches to realize this, that it was really just a way, as a lot of drug addicts do, numb their own pain to their own psychological problems that was caused frequently by abuse, by being abused by loved ones, by all sorts of others' insecurities. Because addiction is really about numbing yourselves to your own pain, so you don't have to deal with it and go through with it. Because that's the really hard work. Healing is hard, right? Um, but the problem with that is that by being so heavy-handed with the metaphor, they nearly lose Willow's psychological problems entirely, and then by making it such a heavy-handed metaphor, it makes it seem like, oh, it's like she's turned into this, like, silly drug addict, and if she just gets off the magic, it'll be fine. And I think that that really does a disservice to her character development over the years. Fortunately, the season comes roaring back to life near the end, and once she flips out, all of a sudden, the stakes come back, and it seems like it's her again, even as she's, like, flipped out, and that's really, it's so devastating to watch too. I mean, and Tara is just the most sweetest, empathetic, like, angel of season 6, that, like, she's the character who really, uh, is the one you're rooting for the most at that time, mostly because she's just, like, at this point, she's become so confident and able to stand up for herself and articulate what she wants. Losing her is so devastating, and yet at the same time, that's in the middle of the season's, like, final, like, revival, when, like, all of a sudden, because once the depression arc ends, all of a sudden the show feels alive and bright again, and it feels like, oh, and it's like it's enjoyable again, and because the characters are all they all feel like themselves again. And
Well,
I feel like they've come through their dark night of the soul, and the dark night of the soul is important and necessary, but the way they handled some of that, especially in regards to Willow, I thought was a big misstep.
so, when it comes to Willow and the drug addiction, because this is probably like of all of the storylines in overall in season 6, Willow's is the most divisive. There are people who love it, a lot of people who hate it. And like, the episodes, so you have Smashed and you have Wrecked. It's like the two-part like mid-season finale, for lack of a better phrase. Smashed is where Buffy and Spike get it on, and Wrecked is where we see Willow, the metaphor with magic being a substitute for drug addiction, where we see that at its grossest, at its most literal in our face. And I think that like a lot of the problems with Willow and that storyline as a greater part of the theme of this season is in that episode Wrecked. I've grown to like Wrecked over the years compared to when I first saw it, I thought it was easily like one of the worst episodes of the season. Especially after coming after Smashed. Smashed is so good. The chemistry there, the dialogue, the chip not working and that messing with everybody, it's so good. But for me with Willow, I think like after Wrecked, we see her trying to control her addiction and work through her addiction. And what really sets her off is the death of Tara. And for me, despite the metaphor being heavy handed, especially in Wrecked, right? I think that the idea that like you present Willow as struggling with addiction as a metaphor for real life drug addiction or whatever kind of addiction, because all the characters are dealing with a life problem, right? Buffy's dealing with depression, Xander and Ani are dealing with like getting married at too young of an age, Dawn's dealing with whatever, blah 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 blah. So Willow's addiction, right, comes, as you say, roaring back at the end when Tara dies. For me, I just find that to be so true to life. And doesn't it feel so accurate that somebody who did struggle with addiction would fall back into that addiction in the greatest possible way whenever they lose the person that they love, especially right after they got them back, So for me, the addiction arc, even though it's not completely flawless, it's something that I cherish because it's so dramatically effective in the way that it churns off at the end with Willow going off the deep end because she lost this and having those addiction qualities, right? What do you think?
I completely agree with you that she relapses when Tara is murdered. That I think that's powerfully effective. I think it makes total sense. And I also think that there, the connection between her reliance and addiction on magic and her psychological issues, her insecurities is made really clear. So that works great for me. Wrecked, on the other hand, is my least favorite episode of season 6 because it slams the home that metaphor so heavy-handed, so thick, so over the top that it gets ridiculously silly. Even before in Smashed, which is an otherwise excellent episode, that whole thing with Willow and Amy like messing with the bronze is so cheesy and goes on way too long. But then Wrecked, she becomes the focus, and despite Allison Hannigan's like excellent performance, she everything like especially with like I just remember cringing when she takes Dawn on that joyride. I'm just like, this is so insanely over the top and ridiculous.
But is it? Can I ask? But is it isn't it kind of true to life that someone with addiction would be acting like that and put someone that they are taking care of in danger? Like imagine like an older sister, who is high on
Yes.
meth or whatever, doing that, it's taking their younger sister in a car and wrecking. Like that is kind of like a parent's worst nightmare. And then the guilt that she feels after that and the tears and like, with Buffy, like she even though she is high, she knows she fucked up. And it's so deep. But again, I get it. It's heavy-handed.
Yes, it is from the way you say it, yes, it is believable, but it also feels that the writers were just instead of making it happen organically like they usually do, like they were centering it all around this. Like they needed this to happen to move the plot forward. Oh,
Mhm.
it's and so I yeah, so I really don't like that, and the next couple of episodes, actually the next several episodes, except for the fabulous dead things, are really, really like, I mean, Dawn is like another one where I'm just like, oh. So season 6 for me has the highest and I think this is why it lands in the middle for me. It has the highest number of episodes that I give 10 out of 10 to, which is 5, by the way, so just saying, but it also has the highest number of episodes that I give less than a 5 to that I hate, and that's 6. So that's really where so that's kind of why it's, like, all over the place for me because I think it's so when I think when it's working, it's just so unbelievably fabulous, and then when it doesn't, which is and it's just it crashes, and so it's just like this kind of, like, super high followed by super low, followed and then returning to a super high. So that's what it feels like to me watching it.
I'm so glad that Dead Things has Sam's stamp of approval because it's one of my favorite episodes. I mean, it's like I think it's the darkest the show has ever been.
Correct. I agree.
Like 100%, like probably like, that and Seeing Red are the darkest, but like Dead Things is more unrelenting in its darkness.
Yeah.
But the acting that comes from Sarah Michelle Gellar, the Buffy's internal struggle to do the right thing, but also she's angry at herself and not just angry at herself because of what happens in that episode, what she thinks she did, but also like the season long thing of why she's so unhappy. It comes out, and again, like going back to how abusive she is to Spike, it's Buffy does this fun thing where oftentimes like Sarah Michelle Gellar will be punching another character and she's talking to the character, yelling at the character. But what Buffy is really saying is about herself. We see that with Faith and Who Are You? With Faith punching Buffy in Faith's body, saying, "You're disgusting, you're this, you're that." And it kind of does the same thing here with Spike. You don't have a soul, there's nothing good or clean in you. Buffy's talking about herself and how she actually feels about her relationship with Spike. But for me, the episode really brings it home when Tara, like I'm gonna start crying, oh my God. But when Tara tells her, "Nope, nothing's wrong with you. It's just a thing with Spike's chip," and Buffy again has to confront that horrible part of herself. Yes, is it heavy? Yes, but I think it's so dramatically effective, and like that relationship, that friendship between Buffy and Tara, and the way that she, of all the people in her life, she chooses Tara to open up to. I find that so beautiful.
Yeah. Well, but it also makes sense because at that point, she
Who
doesn't
else
fe
does she
it's
have?
exactly. Xander and Willow are her 2 best friends, but they're most directly responsible for her current emotional state. And Tara, was the only one really who gave herself some distance. She removed herself from the dysfunction of her relationship with Willow because Willow had completely flipped out and, like did a memory wipe on her, which is abusive. But she also was so kind and supportive and by this point had learned to stand up for herself and really be the kind of person who could set boundaries and had a clear sense of right and wrong and was like just a generally good, sweet, kind person to have around. So it makes sense that that's who Buffy would open up to because she was like the furthest away from all the dysfunction. And so she could relate to her. And it's really Tara who like provides that base of support. It's beautiful.
And isn't it so fitting though for whenever the world sputters out of control and the world is coming to an end that it's because Tara's gone, right? From all of the characters. She was the one solid character in the group and who kept the group, somewhat afloat. She was the one who was taking care of Dawn while Buffy was out fucking Spike and Willow was out getting high. And Xander was
Mhm.
who knows where Xander was. But
Getting cold feet about his wedding.
yeah, big so an underrated part of season 6, in my opinion, since you brought her up earlier, is Anya. For me, I feel like Anya is one of the characters. I mean, this kind of applies to Spike in a different way, but like she gets better and better with each season, in my opinion. And I thought for season 7 having such great Anya stuff, I actually think season 6 would be my favorite Anya. There's so much good Anya stuff in season 6.
Start charging. We're slaying vampires.
Exactly. The game of life. Well, that's season 5, but no, it's just like she's so funny, but
Not
also
unreasonable in that situation, by the way. Somebody should be paying her for what she does. But yeah.
I agree.
Mhm.
And it's not even the hell's bells of it all. Me, like one of my
Oof.
favorite Anya episodes ever is actually Entropy. I think because again, we're seeing Anya kind of at her worst too, and she's doing things, self-deprecating things, self harming things by using Spike just to feel better. She's trying to turn Sander against out of her own pain. And it's just interesting. Even Anya isn't immune to that. I just even like in the finale, Anya is a useful, cool ingredient, right? In the way that she goes head to head with Willow at different times and the role she plays in the magic box.
Yeah, yeah. And Entropy is a good one. I like that one. I like it a lot, and I think it's at that point, the depression era having just been come to a close with the incredibly powerful but unbelievably disturbing Normal Again, which I will address because that's the hardest episode. That episode gets a 10 out of 10 for me, but, also with a caveat that it is the hardest episode in the entire series for me to watch.
Normal
So
Again rocks. It's like one of my top 2 favorite episodes.
I can't put it that high. I just can't.
Well,
But
you don't have
it's
to, but, like, I just
yeah.
find it I find it such an interesting creative way to approach and kind of for Buffy to kind of break free from her depression or begin to be on that journey and pushing Buffy into dark, weird, fucked up places, but also the mirror of the alternate reality is so smart. But like, the speech that Joyce gives to Buffy every single time, waterworks.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on it?
No, it is absolutely amazing, but to take you through my process, the first time I watched it, I had a really violent reaction to it. Felt like, I think I felt as though the series suddenly decided to spit in my investment and everything that was going on by even proposing the idea that she was really a girl in a mental institution in this entire world that she made up in her head. Now, if I'd been more mature at the time, actually, I'm not even going to beat myself up or denigrate myself. I'm the same age as the characters in the show. It was, I was 16 or I was almost 16 when the show started. They were all born in 1981. So was I. So am I. It's like watching it felt like an experience. Like I felt like I was experiencing it. I felt like I was growing up with them. So that felt really, really mean spirited to me. Mind you, the show had obviously played with the concept of alternate realities before. And in fact, in many ways, the show really frequently does do things that play with the ideas of alternate realities happening right in front of us frequently anyway. But this time it was so literal that it was really painful. It was devastating to watch, especially the last shot, because the last shot is just like, her in the asylum with the acknowledge that the Buffy in that reality, if it was reality, chose to stay in her delusion. So interpreting it that way really, really made me angry. But that being said, as I grew up and as I rewatched it several times, I really understood the episode really provided a framework for Buffy to finally say goodbye to Joyce in a way that most people never really get a chance to do. Most people do not get a chance to say goodbye to their moms when they lose them in like a perfect way to get that opportunity. And it gave her that opportunity. And that's really what able to make Buffy to get out of her depression. That being said, the most difficult scene in the entire series for me to watch is Buffy momentarily giving up on her life in Sunnydale and believing that she really is in the asylum, but then literally her trying to murder her sister and all of her friends. I could not deal. I was
Yeah.
literally I was like my heart was racing, like, I was, like, shaking, like, that was that's way too much for me. I don't think like, all the other like, there's plenty of, like, insanely violent stuff that happens in the show, but like that felt like just losing my anchor. Like, that was I felt completely at sea, and so for those 10 minutes, I was watching it with my then boyfriend at the time, and I was not okay. So yeah, but I am now, and I realize now that it's a masterpiece.
So, but just like the moment where Buffy is in like under the steps, right? And she stands up, right? That
Mhm.
is just like, I mean, the metaphor of that and the way that the light shines like on her eyes through the
Mhm.
staircase, it's just like, I think that it achieves the goal of Buffy kind of getting out of her depression or beginning that process because it's not just like, ooh, boom, you're done. It's a process. And we see that go from normal again through grave. And grave, like, her speech with Dawn, I love. I mean, in some ways you could look at that and think, oh, it comes on really fast. In the episode, but I think everything that Buffy has been working toward from normal again through grave materializes in that moment. I don't know. I love it.
No, Grave is great. Grave is really good. There's a lot I mean, especially, like, from Normal Again to Grave, that last run of episodes during the season is all, like, really solid. Like, it's all pretty great.
So, I think that the most entertaining, like 10 minutes of Buffy occurs in season 6. It's not the musical episode, and it's not Tabula Rasa. If you had to take a guess, what would it be? I wanna see if you have like if we're on the same wavelength here. And this is like an impossible task. It's like a needle in a haystack, but once I say it, you're like, duh.
But okay, so entertaining could mean anything, so it doesn't necessarily mean light. But
It
unless
is light.
then I'm gonna guess it's either in Flooded or Life Cereal.
It's the mummy hand in Life Series.
Ah!
I love the mummy hand. I love it.
Because those are the only other 2, like, light comic episodes in the entire seasons. Yeah, I get it.
What are your thoughts on Life Serial in general?
That's okay. Flooded and Life Serial are okay. Yeah, they're alright. I get the whole, like, need for Buffy to find a job, which obviously makes total sense, especially with dealing with, like, becoming an adult. But that being said, at least in terms of that, I never found that aspect of the season to be, like, the most believable. So, I thought it was fine on Life Entertainment, but I didn't really think that, I didn't think it was all that compelling. But maybe it was not meant to be because I think if the trio had been as dark as they were right out of the gate, it would not have been so effective when all of a sudden they did turn really, really evil. As opposed to being like initially just like the pains in the ass they were because they were just like little kids and that's the flip side of it is like, our heroes are all like growing up or trying to become like responsible adults and the initially seems to be the villain of the season, even though it's not really if you're paying attention. The trio, they don't wanna grow up. That's their whole thing. They don't wanna grow up. They wanna remain kids forever. They want everything handed to them on a silver platter. They don't wanna have to put in the work, and join the rest and then join the rest of us, and I get it. Being an adult sucks a lot of the time, but
I see. I
you have to go
I
through it.
I don't mind Life Serial in terms of the way that it approaches it because for the reasons you mentioned, like, yes, we need to see the trio. So, first of all, I agree with you on Flooded. Like, I think Flooded is just okay. I don't really have strong feelings about Flooded. I do love Life Serial, though, because I think it's important to show Buffy attempting to go back into school,
Mhm,
attempting to do different kinds of jobs. A
mhm.
job that, would make sense for her, lifting construction shit, perfect for the Slayer. But then also, no one else will take her. So it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll go to the magic box where I have an in, right? And still that doesn't work out. And just her struggle with that, the daily struggle of life when you're dealing with chemical things about yourself and your emotions, right? So I think that I think it's the most fun I have in the season besides the musical and Tabula Rasa. I don't know. The Mummy Hand is just classic Buffy in my opinion. Like that's like we was off air. Sam and I were talking. Oh no, wait, I was on air. When we talked about Earshot and like I just feel like this is a very like kind of earshotty type episode. I don't know. So Sam, I want to talk about the two episodes I kind of referenced a lot just now, which were the musical episode Once More with Feeling and Tabula Rasa. So take it away.
Okay, I was gonna try and shock you into thinking that I might not think that the musical is a 10 out of 10 just to see what your face would look like, but there's no way you
Girl,
ever believe me.
come on.
Um, I think one astute, commenter once called it the best episode of anything. It is just so fabulous because it really does it's just the most enjoyable, like, brilliantly conceived musical, like on either TV or screen, big or small, in Mini Moon, and it's just like beautifully composed and written and all of that and staged and everything. Most of the actors prove to be quite adept singers. It's really quite something. And at the same time, the episode is very, very much about the darkness of all their situations, about the struggles that they're going through. It's really, really bleak, yet it's also so incredibly fun. So you're like, yes, so it's delightful. It's absolutely delightful. I think it's the longest episode of the show ever, and it's just well worth it. And it's so much fun, especially when you realize how they realize watching them realize just how screwed up all their lives are. And that's amazing. Tabula Rasa, I think it's very, very good. I really, really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. I do think that, plots like that sometimes give you an easy way out because having everyone lose their memory is just a way for there to be some delightfully silly shenanigans for most of the episode, most of which are fun, especially when Anya starts conjuring bunnies out of nowhere. And then
After just singing about bunnies
after just
before.
singing about
The
bunnies.
the episode
So, unfortunately, like, the beginning part and then the final part are amazing to me because they're really about dealing with the fallout of the revelations from the musical. Maybe I think the silly shenanigans of this episode are maybe a way of giving us a brief reprieve before the rest of the season turns, like, super heavy and dark and frightening, and that's totally understandable, and I think it's great, but I think that they're generally speaking, I think there are other episodes of the show that are really silly and light that are better than this. So, yeah.
So I'm gonna actually probably surprise you here. Maybe not. I don't know. I am not the most organic fan of Tabula Rasa. I like it a lot, but I've never felt the passion for it that I have for, probably, a good 10 to 12 other episodes in this season. And because like the thing is like it's one of like the fan favorites and I like it, but I think that, like, they do a lot with the formula but like you just described, it's very predictable in terms of like, "Oh, it's gonna lead to shenanigans," and like, "Oh, isn't this
Yeah.
funny?" Because 'Cause we're privy to the knowledge that they aren't, right? But and like, I mean, it is also emotionally powerful, like that Michelle Branch song at the end with the montage. I'm a sucker for a montage, and I think, it's a very painful episode in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't call it one of my favorite Buffy episodes. So, while I do enjoy it, I find it just a little bit overrated. I'm more of a Dead Things guy than I am a Tabula Rasa
Right.
guy.
Right. Same, same. And I completely agree. And I say that also knowing that, Tabula Rasa is a widely beloved fan favorite. I know it's one of Joss Whedon's favorites too, and that's fine. But that being said, I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. And I do think there are other comic episodes that are richer and funnier than that one is. And I think it's just because of the plot. So that's all. But yeah, I do really like it. I do think it's probably just on the cracking the upper half of the episodes of season 6 for me. So I think it's fine.
So as we kind of exit out here, I want to know I have the two biggest controversial things about Buffy season 6 are one, Tara's death and then the other being the arc of Spuffy. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on it. Where do you
Well,
stand on those two
both of
things?
both of which come to a head in the very same episode.
Yes.
So the Spuffy arc in season 6, especially in season 6, is really powerful, but also really much of their sexcapade, which is like forms the center of the season, and much of their like abusive relationship is also happening at the same time as Willow's what I think god awful magic a drug addiction thing going on. So it's hard to parse that out at times for me. And so I find even though I find a lot of their stuff really fascinating, I do think that a lot of what I could be appreciating about that is really marred by what I find to be their screw up of Willow's character and also the gradual like crumbling of like Xander and Anya's nuptials. It's just really like this. So the middle of season 6, I'm not a really big fan of. I think that Buffy and Spike thing is like the only thing holding that up. I really, really do. But I think it's really complicated and I think it's really fascinating. But I do think there's also some really, really incredibly boundary crossing stuff there that I don't know if they fully thought through the ramifications of when they were writing it. Like, first of all, there was the episode where Buffy turns invisible. That's stupid effing invisible, right? Like, oh my God, really? That's the best they could do. Like, yeah, I get it. The trio is supposed to be idiots and they're supposed to be like juvenile, like overgrown teenagers who never want to grow up. So they like, come up with an invisible right. Okay, but like Buffy basically sexually assaults Spike in that episode, and if she hadn't revealed who it was, that would have been like tantamount to rape. That
Yeah.
if and then speaking of, we have to get to the dreaded attempted rape scene, which is easily the most controversial scene in the entire series.
I understand the writing goals here, and, like, I think it's important in Spike's arc, in the arc of this relationship, this relationship that is abusive, that it was kind of romanticized for the viewer through these really hot, sexy scenes for the past 10 episodes. I think it's important that we were hit with what the reality of that abusive relationship was. Is the scene long? Yes, but I think I see the importance of it, even though I think that the way that you said it, though, I see the importance, especially for triggering. This is the triggering event to get Spike to get his soul back and to realize to go on that journey. But I think what you said is actually it sums up the problem really, really well, which is they didn't think at that time in 2002. Maybe they didn't have the same cultural tools and the conversation that we have today to think about the ramifications of how this would look at the time, look in 10 years, look in 20 years, and feel. I don't know.
Yeah. So Spike's attempted rape of Buffy is again the most controversial scene of the whole series, generally speaking, and unsurprisingly, it's really hard to watch.
By far
It's
the hardest
really,
thing to watch.
really, really hard to watch. Well, to each their own. Everybody's different. Again, to me, I already said what the hardest thing for me to watch was,
Oh, right.
but this is easily no, that's okay. This is easily number two for me.
Yeah.
It's so intense, and the whole season again there were it may not be that surprising that it led up to this because first of all, it is no way Buffy's fault. That was completely Spike's fault. She said no, she wanted to like he came into her bathroom and she was like, get out. She didn't want to talk to him. So that was everything with the entire scene is completely his fault. But it was also just really messy because the entire season they had been doing this whole like abusive relationship, mutually abusive, where she had been mostly abusing him, but he was also abusing her too. And there were a lot of mixed messages being sent back and forth, no's meaning yeses, and he was also still really in love with her. It is just it was just the way they thought it out and the way they wrote that scene specifically just as a character note for Spike to prompt him to go get a soul, which was great for him, but also they didn't really think out the ramifications that would have for somebody like Buffy. Now, in this show, of course, Buffy is like supernaturally strong and has like Slayer powers and all that stuff. So, despite her being injured, it did not take her that long to fend him off and get him off of her. But if you've ever been a sexual assault survivor and you watched a scene like that, that has to be horrifying. And I can't. And so I think that was really poorly thought out by the writers. Apparently, from what I've read, Jane Espenson was the only one who was just like, "No, we should not be doing this. Like, this is really bad. Like, this is going like this. You can't look at Spike the same way after this. And like, we're not considering like Buffy's point of view in this at all. And maybe I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they thought it because Buffy will be able to fight him off after not too long. It won't be so bad. No, it is. I think it's riveting to watch, but again, I think that I think that the purpose that it served was solely for Spike's arc, and I think that that was a really big mistake. But I still think it's still I still think it's a great episode, but it's also and it makes for great television, but it's also deeply, deeply disturbing for multiple reasons. And I think obviously for ways more than I think people realize at the time.
So what about Tara's death? Are you pro Tara's death?
Oh, again, I mean, I think Seeing Red is a great episode. So I think that the things that I think it's shockingly powerful. I think the drama is well done, but it's also horrifying. And again, her death was not about her at all. It was about Willow.
Yeah.
I
And I
think
guess, like, can I just say, like, the way I've always thought about it and justified it in my head is, like, the core cast, meaning, like, the people we meet in the pilot and that are with us through, Buffy,
Mhm,
Willow, Xander, and
mhm.
Giles. I know Giles isn't in the season, but, like, those 3, like, I don't in my mind, I always kind of justified it because it's about this. Willow is the character who is the main character, and Tara is
Yes,
appendage of
yes.
her. So I get it though, and that's and I not something I really considered before the way that you phrased it. So that way.
It's true. I understand what you're saying, and in that sense, there is a sense that I think that especially back then, even as shows like Buffy, exploded the idea of like, nobody is safe, anyone can go at any time. It still had the very traditionalist thinking of staying attached to the main characters, to the OG characters, and having those characters um be our roots and be the people who we get the most attached to and the people who we're rooting for, even when they transgress. But that being said, the other characters in the show are there too, and we become attached to them, especially when the writing is as good as it is on this show. So even though, and it's this, and you can tell that this is the vision they're going for by the way that all the OG characters are still alive at the end of the series. They've survived. And that's who the writers' hearts are with, and that's who, I mean, depending on who you ask, the audience may not have all their hearts with all those characters, but I think that it's essentially like an optimistic reassurance of like how life should be according to them. That like the people who you first meet and who first become attached to, those are the here like they're sold as the heroes of the show at the beginning, and the series sees that through to the end. And it's meant to be a reassuring outlook on life, and God knows they really pull it off, but that's not necessarily true because just because uh these other characters, these side characters are not the main characters doesn't mean that they don't deserve dignity and respect too and deserve to live too. And that's life. Sometimes the people that you grow closest with at an early age are not the ones you stick around with. Sometimes, so I think that this idea that like that Tara's death is really about Willow because it is so random. But then again, you know, many of the most the most shocking resonant deaths on the show, with the exception of, Miss Calendar, were really random. So there is that. Overall, this is a really roundabout way of saying, yes, I'm a fan of both of these things, but I also understand that they are really problematic and they actually both hurt a lot of people. And so even though I'm riveted by by it, I understand that there were a lot of people who really felt emotionally harmed by this. And I think that that is something to reconsider and maybe look at and have an open discussion with in terms of reevaluating whether these were good decisions or not.
Yeah. Well, no, I actually think, this was such an interesting topic. I'm glad that you were up for doing this because you did such a good job and such a succinct job, such a clear job of kind of showing both sides of every single thing that we talked about tonight. So, and for it being the most controversial season of television, I think that, this is kind of a perspective that we needed. So, Sam, thank you so, so much.
Oh, Ryan, you are so welcome. I'm so happy to be here. You know how much I hate talking about this show. So I am so glad that you asked me to do this. It's always a pleasure. And yeah. So anytime you want to talk Buffy, I'm here. I love it. And there's so much to talk about on this show. And I'm so glad that we got the opportunity to talk about your favorite season because it is a really, I think it's not my favorite season, and I wouldn't call it the best, but I do think that it's the most daring. I think it's absolutely the bravest season, without a doubt.
Well, Sam, please tell everybody where they can find you online.
So y'all can find me at Sam B. Levy on Facebook and Instagram.
Well, and I would if we do. I don't know when the new show is coming out, but I would love to do all the seasons, hopefully, at some point, and cover the new show whenever it comes out and have a discussion about it because, I mean, it's you want to talk about controversial, right? Yeah, and there's gonna be so much to say as we undergo the next era.
I would love that. I would
So,
love that. And you know how to reach me.
all right, everybody, it's Sam B. Levy. Sam dot B. Levy. Got it.
Yes. Thank you all so much. It was a pleasure. Once again, Ryan, it was such a pleasure being on here. Thank you.
All right, everybody, here we are. We are at the point in which the episode is going to switch from being a public episode to a private episode for the Patreon. So if you would love to hear what I have to say about Once More with Feeling, the famous musical episode from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, please continue listening or go to Patreon, subscribe, become a member, and get access to the audio commentary. So I'm going to press play here and we will get going. So everybody, pull it up if you're watching it literally with me, or if you're just listening, just hang tight. Okay, so I'm going to count down here to start. So 3, 2, 1, and I'm pressing play. Okay, here we go. Oh my god, a different theme song. So I remember the first time I watched this, and I did not know that this was a musical episode. So this was so shocking to me to see this, like, almost like 1950s style, like, cutesy um TV theme with the actors' pictures different. So once more with feeling, we get a big grand musical title across the screen. That's so cool. And we start on an alarm clock, Buffy, Willow, and Xander, the photograph in the background, and we see Buffy in bed, depressed, whatever. Oh, so special guest star Anthony Stewart Head. I forgot that he is not a main player in this season. Oh my god, and Amber Benson as Tara. So this setup here, the characters are just kind of like starting their days, and we see Tara finding the flowers that Willow used to put a spell on her, and she's smelling it. She thinks it's endearing. But the whole premise of this setup is to kind of like be cutesy. And there's Buffy. She's just in bed staring at the alarm clock because she's depressed, and because she came back, she died, and her friends pulled her out of heaven, brought her back to life. They think that they brought her back from hell, but really she's from heaven. That's why she's in a funk. She's depressed, and she's scribbling on her notebook, and it's just complete darkness except for this little block of light. And there's Giles getting her to train. Yeah. Do. Original songs and music and lyrics by Joss Whedon, written and directed by Joss Whedon. Love this photograph of Buffy. I love the leather jacket. Like, it's just so good. I go out and fight the fight. Still, I always feel the strangest estrangement. Nothing here is real. Nothing here is right. So, this is like, it was such a smart way to open the musical episode with this song by Buffy, Patrolling, because this is her typical vibe. This is what we're used to with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is like the pattern of what we're used to when it comes to Buffy. Just generic vampires, and she's doing her fight, and she also can narrate where she is personally. I also, the vampire noticing that she is not herself, and she's like, "Thanks for noticing." Yeah, I mean, this is such a grand ambition by Joss Whedon and the cast. I love this. So, this is like the Buffy feminism sums up in 30 seconds. Some handsome prince saying, "How can I repay?" And Buffy's like, "Whatever. I don't want to be." She goes back to her own problems. So now we're here at the end of the song. I love this song. I think it's so great. But this is the Little Mermaid song. This is so like the Disney princess song. I just wanna be, and then it's like kaboom, alive. Yeah. So like at the end of Part of Your World from Little Mermaid, like Ariel kind of sings on the rock, and then we see the big waves crash. That's what they recreate here with the vampire being dusted. It's very cute. So, so Buffy knows something's wrong. I mean, in addition to being like, coming back from the dead, being depressed, right? She knows something's off. Like, she was singing, and everyone's acting normal. Disassociating, who knows? I don't know. Sarah looks so pretty. Oh my god, I can't even. Sarah Michelle Gellar can rock literally any color, any outfit, any style. We love it. Burst into song. And now the veil comes off. Everyone was singing. And like, the problem with doing musical episodes is, one, they take a long time to make, to write, to produce, to do the music for the cast to rehearse and record and get everything right. And at the end of the day, it's like cost versus benefit. You're investing all of that energy and time into one episode out of 22 episodes a year. So that's why they're rare. And like the concept, like for Buffy, Joss Whedon really cracked the code and thinking like, oh, well, it's a demon of the week, and he's putting a spell on them. So therefore, there's a reason for them to be singing. And there's a more metaphorical reason, which is like the characters aren't being truthful with each other. Each of them has like a big struggle, and through song, through having to sing, the truth comes out to what they can't say to each other in real life. And here we are in I've Got a Theory, which is the first big group song. Oh my god, so fun. which is ridiculous because witches, they were persecuted, wicked, love the earth, and woman power, and I'll be over here. And this is the famous Anya moment. Anya's thing, she's always had a fear of bunnies, and Joss Whedon gives her this big slam bam, thank you, ma'am, interlude. Hopping legs and twitchy little noses. Thank God, like, all these actors could really sing except for Allison Hannigan. And it's funny because Allison Hannigan is like besides Sarah Michelle Gellar, she drives this season as Willow. She's the big bad of the season. She's like a co-lead with Sarah Michelle Gellar in season 6, but she is the least featured in this episode. In fact, this is only the most she sings in the entire episode in this one song, and it's an ensemble song. I think it's interesting too, like, all the characters are giving their own perspectives and kind of craziness and like thinking, what should we do? And Buffy's the one that brings everybody to calm here. And Sarah Michelle Gellar hates singing, like, and yet she always kind of gets suckered into singing. She's sung on at least like 3 or 4 or even 5 occasions throughout her career, and she says she despises it. But she's great at it. I mean, listen to her. The same old trips. Why should we care? Ugh. But this is like the essence of who Buffy is as a heroine, and who she is as the leader of the group. Like, she's the one who brings everyone to calm and center and coalescing, and brings everyone peace and happiness, even though she herself is dead inside. And that's such a clever line, the "Hey, I've died twice," it always gets a chuckle from people. We love a community bonding moment, and then it ends with a slight follow-up joke, except for bunnies. So, oh my goodness. So, apparently Joss Whedon has talked about this episode and like wanting to do a big, like, 25 person plus sequence that you would see like in a Broadway musical, like a big ensemble like dance number. And because there's a small cast or a small central cast, he still got away with it. He got it out of the way, as he said, so he could focus on the characters. So right here with the mustard, they got the mustard out, and there's everyone dancing. I mean, how grand. And oh my gosh, like, so yeah, you can actually see Sarah in the frame behind them, which is fun. Oh my God, wow. It's not just us. See, the other thing about Scream and Buffy is there is a certain humor. It's not only the way that the characters talk, like there's a humor aspect, a ba-dump. Oh my God, did it sing? Most Anya line ever, right? Dawn says, "I gave birth to a pterodactyl," and Anya, "Oh my God, did it sing?" So I just want to take a minute as we kind of enter into this next song that is about Tara singing to Willow about how much she loves her and how wonderful their relationship has been to her life. It's just so crazy to me. I remember when the first time I watched this episode, I must have been going from in between 7th and 8th grade, and I watched it in the summertime at my grandmother's house. I remember it so vividly. I remember just being like on cloud 9 watching it. But this sequence, like, I also remember it vividly, and I remember that time in my life. That was before I knew I was gay, and this was like the representation I got to see. And things like this, as growing up, it helped me feel comfortable with myself and feel assured of who I was, that I wasn't weird and never doubted myself. I know people love to rag on Buffy for representation, for the Joss Whedon of it all, for everything, but I can't overstate how much Tara and Willow's relationship meant to me as a gay person growing up, and how much confidence it gave me in myself. It's so beautiful. And I would argue, like, besides Buffy's relationships, this is maybe even including Buffy's relationships, like, Tara and Willow are the best couple on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So, Amber Benson is really important to this season. I would say that she's less important to seasons 4 and 5. And this is the season where she actually gets to act, and Tara actually gets to be important in a really huge, different way. and this is like one of the best showcases of her because she is a singer in general. And Joss, I guess, was able to use Anthony Stewart Head, who is a singer, James Marsters, who is a singer, and really give them big gusto moments in this episode. This is such a pretty song. They're both beautiful. The setting is beautiful. And of course, this song, it's sad. It's devastating because we know, the audience knows that Willow is abusing Tara. She's, she put a spell on her in the previous episode that kind of like made her forget a fight that they had. So that there's an element of abuse there. And yet now we see Tara singing how much she loves her, And there's, of course, a double meaning with the song, right? She says, I'm under your spell. They're witches. They're using spell as like a metaphor for love, right? But then also she's literally under her spell. Willow put a spell on her and took away her memory. So there's so many different layers here with the meaning. And then we transition from them in the park to the bedroom. Oh my God. And so, Taylor Swift was not the first person to sing about wood, because we're about to hear a very like spicy line from Tara singing to Willow about spread beneath my willow tree. I can feel you inside. Oh my God. How dare anybody who loves this song to criticize Wood by Taylor Swift? I'm sorry. Oh my God. And so, what's funny? Back then, whenever I first watched this, I was still so young that I didn't recognize that they were having sex at this moment or that there was an orgasm occurring. I just thought this was part of the spell, the magic, and like, that's why the show works so well. And why this episode in particular is such a great musical episode is the writing really is all that. The for the character, like within the episode, the the standalone aspect of it, it's very entertaining. It's funny, it's sad, it's heartbreaking, it's entertaining, it's heartwarming, but then at the same time, these like the musical episode is hitting episode 7, which is a third of the way through this season, and what happens in this episode is a pivotal moment for a lot of the characters, like I was saying earlier, to be honest with each other about things that they were hiding, or to have realizations to push them into the next phase of the season. So I mean, it's very smart on so many levels. And then here we're seeing the guy dancing, and this is where the villainous aspect of making everybody sing comes into play. The demon who's making everyone sing, he's making them he's burning them alive, basically. So like the gist of Sweet, that's his name. He's red makeup, red suit, kind of a gangster type, and he is making them sing and dance until they combust into flames. So that's kind of the threat here. So here we are at the next musical number with Xander and Anya. It's called I'll Never Tell. They're both in like these really interesting pajamas, which is fun because like musicals always have, like, even if like characters are supposed to be dressed normally, like the costumes are always just a little bit decked out to give a more theatrical 1950s jazz hands vibe. And I think both of the outfits here, Xander's pajamas and Anya's little sexy red outfit here, so this is actually one of the longer songs. I think it may be the longest song in this musical episode. The thing that's really great about Buffy is like we have these characters who are supernatural, who have supernatural history, and that we shouldn't be so. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this public preview of the commentary for this month. If you would like to listen to the complete audio commentary for the movie, please head on over to Patreon, Scream with RCS, subscribe at any tier to get the audio for this movie, for the audio commentary. Or if you subscribe at a higher tier, tier 2 or above, you can get the video for me performing the commentary while watching the movie. So again, everybody, thank you so much for supporting the podcast.